When we were kids, all of us would have loved to have Spider-Man's powers. But as adults, now that we see the world differently, I would bet no one would want to live Peter Parker's life. Everyone mistreats him. He lost his job as a delivery driver, his aunt is struggling financially, his so-called friends treat him badly, and he has a lot of problems at school. You can see it in his eyes. Peter's tired, and he had to give up being with the love of his life to fulfill his duty, all because of this suit and the consequences of being Spider-Man, a responsibility he never chose. Or did he? But that's not all. His boss at his second job is arrogant, he's paid little, the only paycheck he's given is taken away because he's several months behind on his rent. Interestingly, all of this happens to him on his birthday, a birthday he himself didn't even remember. He's a reflection of how his obligations as a working student, and especially as a superhero, have saturated every facet of his existence, relegating his well-being and identity to the background. Yet, he's always smiling, even though his friend is constantly nagging him about still photographing the guy who supposedly killed his dad. Peter, throughout most of the movie, doesn't seem focused. His tiredness is obvious, and his attitude isn't the best. Even though he smiles as if he were happy, his work as Spider-Man is so demanding that his entire life as Peter Parker is a mess. This is something that can undoubtedly happen to us in our daily lives, feeling overwhelmed with so many things happening at once. And perhaps the saddest part is that we can't control any of it. It's often believed that Peter Parker forgot his birthday because he was busy all day. But the reality is that he mentions not feeling worthy of a birthday thrown by his aunt, not after the injustice she felt towards him, and how useless he felt when he saw the eviction notice. How is it that even though she can't avoid losing the only thing she has left of her husband, Ben, she can't part with the money for her nephew? This makes him feel like he's failing her as her guardian. Peter listens too and comforts his aunt, but inside, he feels devastated and carries a deep burden of guilt. Peter wins his fight cleanly in less time than requested. The excuse they used to avoid paying him what they agreed upon. He leaves the office, and at that precise moment, a robbery occurs. He disassociates himself from the robbery in the same way, allowing the thief to leave the building. And that same thief he let go ends up killing his Uncle Ben, his father figure, and one of the people he loves the most in the world. This provoked a very deep sense of guilt in him, but we see of Peter Parker putting his personal life aside to be the superhero who takes down criminals. Our reflection of his own guilt fuels his desire of having able to do something more. Catching villains is a way for him to atone for his guilt. It's as if symbolically each criminal he catches represents the criminal he didn't catch, who killed his Uncle Ben. These feelings are so strong that Peter will soon have hallucinations that will make him question everything. A few minutes later, Peter goes out to the front yard where he finds Mary Jane, whom he's still in love with. There's still a lot of chemistry between them, and their feelings for each other are evident. But Peter knows that having a relationship with her would put his life at risk, so he avoids any attempt at romantic advances. When Mary Jane suggests that they stay together, whether out of protection or fear of being happy, this decision became one of the greatest burdens of the second film. Throughout the days, he saw her daily, sighed passionately day after day, and wherever he went, she was there. Life and fate, in the form of a bus and his beloved face, desperately cried out to him to start living. She tells him that she's been seeing someone. Parker is happy for her and tells her that he will come see her play. The girl's excited and makes him promise that he won't miss it, to which Peter replies, "I'll be there," a promise that will be difficult for him to keep. After that small celebration, Peter Parker returns to the reality he experiences day after day. He now lives alone in an old building where his landlord constantly bothers him about the rent and is quite rude to him. He can't even satisfy his basic needs, a new backpack, clothes, or an apartment with a decent bathroom for which he owes months of rent, which shows that he experiences a contrasting duality between two lives. On one hand, he's the incredible Spider-Man, New York sensation. Everyone looks up to him. But on the other hand, away from the suit and mask, we have Peter Parker. In his daily life, Peter lives amidst anguish, fatigue, financial insecurity, and most definitely depression. Sometimes he feels invisible, but above all, he faces profound loneliness. Not only physical, but also emotional. Not being able to talk about his secret with anyone, not having the freedom to say why he's late, why it's so hard for him to stay afloat, why he feels the immense guilt for the loss of a loved one. Because inside, he feels guilty, and not being able to say it suffocates him. Peter bears trying to maintain a balance between these two worlds, a balance that will soon push him to his limit, causing him to throw in the towel. The next day, Harry, who has inherited the management of his father's company, introduces Peter to Dr. Otto Octavius, a renowned scientist working in the field of nuclear fusion, whom Peter admires. Harry and Octavius now work together, as Harry's company has invested virtually all of his capital in funding Dr. Octavius Research, which consists of creating a small reactor that will literally give energy to the world. the power of the sun in their hands. If the Doctor manages to make his experiment work, Harry's company will become even more wealthy. He will once again bring prestige to his late father's company, and Dr. Octavius will go down in history. That night, Peter does his laundry and gets ready to see his beloved Jane's play. His clothes are stained red and blue. Parker changes, searches his closet, and chooses between his 2 suits, or rather, his 2 lives. He puts on the jacket, grabs his ticket to Jane's play, and buys a bouquet of flowers. Well, just 3 with the few cents he had left, and leaves on his own motorcycle. In the dressing room, we see that Mary Jane is especially nervous and is excited that night because Peter is going to see her for the first time. But on the way to the play, Heroic Duty unexpectedly calls Peter, and he, as always, has to answer the call to stop a robbery and save a couple of lives, which delays him considerably. Peter decides every day to put the common good above his own. He begins to blame his responsibilities as Spider-Man for the life he leads, which doesn't allow him to live the way he wants, since his superhero role once again gets in the way when he must need to live Peter Parker's life. The problem is that when he arrives, the security guard at the entrance denies him entry, since no one is allowed in after the play has started. Peter tries to talk to him, but the chambermaid practically mocks him and won't let him in, so he decides to wait for Mary Jane outside to talk to her. Thinking of what excuse he could give her as he watched her leave, he was stunned by her beauty. But before he could approach her, that person arrived, the son of Jameson, the magazine's editor. Peter had a couple of encounters with him, a tall, athletic, and successful man. John was a well-known astronaut, and above all, very different from his father. He was kind, polite, and pleasant. As much as Peter tried to hate him, he couldn't know that John was what he had always wanted to be. He saw it with his own eyes when he met Dr. Otto and Rosie. He understood what true love was. It requires time and commitment he couldn't give to Mary Jane. Unlike her new boyfriend, perhaps Peter was simply destined to photograph Mary Jane from afar in the arms of many other men, and they never had a single picture together. That day, all of Peter's problems came crashing down. He sees a man approaching her, hug her, and take her out to dinner, leaving Peter heartbroken and deeply guilty for having disappointed the woman he loves so much, once again because of his obligations as a superhero. It's from this event, feeling completely broken, the only thing that calmed him down a little in these moments was swinging, and suddenly his powers failed him again, which causes him injuries when he falls onto the rooftop. Heartbroken, powerless, and with his scooter wrecked, he returns home and sees on the walls a reminder of the person he was so deeply disappointed. Remember what I told you about his underwear that is stained blue and red? This detail symbolizes how the responsibilities and demands of his life as a superhero have begun to taint even the most intimate aspects of his personal life, especially affecting his most important relationship and the small but significant aspect of his daily life. The day of the presentation of Dr. Octavius' nuclear reactor finally arrives. He organizes a small event for scientists and investors to witness it. However, it's about to turn into a tragedy. The doctor turns on the machine, leaving everyone amazed. But a few seconds later, the machine begins to destabilize, absorbing the metal objects, creating chaos in the room. Spider-Man appears, saves Harry's life, and begins to disconnect the machine to stop the destruction. During the chaos, a beam destroys the inhibitor that protected the doctor from mechanical arms to take over his neurological system, and a sheet of glass ends the life of the doctor's wife. Finally, Spider-Man manages to disconnect the machine and temporarily stop the experiment, but with the inhibitor destroyed, the doctor's robotic arms require a will of their own, killing all doctors present that were helping him in operating room. When the doctor wakes up and realizes what his creation has done, he screams in terror and runs out of the hospital. The arms carry him to a destroyed and isolated warehouse in an abandoned and decaying dock, a clear reflection of his life and mental state. He lost his wife and his life's project. However, this sadness is overshadowed by a voice speaking to him from within his mind. The voice is a product of the artificial intelligence that has taken control of his thoughts, telling him that they have to rebuild the reactor there. They don't have enough money, so he will have to start stealing. Probably the worst day in the life of Peter is about to come. The newspaper editor asks Peter for a different job. This time, he will have to be in the high society event, a party for his astronaut son. Peter asks to get paid in advance as he needs the money, and he gets this. Later, Peter accompanies his Aunt May to the bank to help her try to get a loan so they don't lose their home. However, despite trying to negotiate, the bank manager tells him he can't approve their loan. But at that moment, Dr. Octavius bursts into the bank to rob it. Peter saves his aunt's life and then sneaks away to put on his Spider-Man suit and faces danger. As the combat progresses, Peter's powers start failing once again. He gets knocked down, and in the streets, Octavius captures Aunt May. He takes her hostage and flees with her on his tentacles, climbing a building. Spider-Man confronts him, and they fight briefly. He rescues Aunt May, but Octavius escapes with the money. Night falls, and with it, the event Parker is scheduled to photograph. But tonight, his life as Peter Parker is about to suffer several blows. They take the bread he wanted from his face. Peter's best friend, Harry, is drunk, trying to forget that he has tarnished his family's name and lost his entire fortune in a bad investment. Furthermore, Peter's boss yells at him and belittles him, demanding he takes photos of him and his wife with the most influential people at the event. To make matters worse, the event's host announces the arrival of John, the renowned man being celebrated that night, who is accompanied by none other than Mary Jane. The audience applauds, but Peter's in shock, his heart sinking at what he sees. Yes, he himself rejected Mary Jane, not out of a lack of love, but out of the sense of duty and to protect her. However, this noble motive doesn't lessen his pain. Instead, it intensifies it, seeing her with someone else. Peter not only feels a void in his chest, but also a mixture of powerlessness and possible humiliation. He is there as a mere spectator, a photographer capturing the happiness of others while his own personal sacrifice remains hidden and misunderstood. He is the one who has kept the city at peace. He is the one who has saved hundreds of lives. He is the one who deserves recognition but remains anonymous. He feels the sadness for the loss of a love, the frustration of his powerlessness in the face of circumstances, and the humiliation of seeing Mary Jane with someone who represents everything he cannot be because of the responsibility he carries as Spider-Man. Then, they snatch another little dessert from him and approaches Mary Jane. She reveals that she is very upset and disappointed with him since he didn't intend to play as he had promised. Peter, trapped by his secret double life, is speechless, unable to reveal the true reason for his absence. The frustration and helplessness of not being able to share his reality with Mary Jane are reflected in his face, which is on the verge of tears. However, this is only the beginning of the night that is about to get worse. Harry, even more drunk, blames Peter for his father's death, enraged that despite Peter's contact with Spider-Man, he never turned him in to the authorities. Peter tries to calm him down. A key detail in this part is that when Peter, seeing his friend suffering, allows him to take out his frustration on him. He couldn't dodge the first blow because he didn't see himself as a threat. However, he deliberately allows a second blow so that Harry releases all the pain he feels inside, thus letting himself be hit by his own friend. However, this accident reveals that Peter's increasingly willing to sacrifice his well-being, even allowing others to mistreat him emotionally and physically. The situation is further complicated by the great secret Peter's keeping. The discontent with Harry wasn't enough to plunge Peter into depression. Now Mary Jane was doing her part, being introduced as Captain Jameson's girlfriend and his future wife, leaving Peter at the lowest point of his life. But the blows life is dealing with him don't stop there. Jameson yells at him to snap out of it and takes a picture of Mary Jane, the love of his life, getting engaged to another man, and Peter, with no other choice, does it. Now his only escape is Spider-Man. Mentally exhausted, his powers weaken, he can no longer shoot webs or climb walls. His vision is starting to blur again and enters a duel with himself. So, confused about what's happening to his body, Peter visits a doctor. The doctor informs him that he's physically in perfect condition, suggesting the problem is psychological. He has spent so much time wanting to live two different lives that he began to lose his identity. He doesn't know who he is or where he's going, but he has the power to decide to choose who he is. This has a profound impact on Peter, as it marks the first time he truly contemplates and questions whether he wants to live the life he's been leading. The doctor's perspective opens his eyes, making him see that despite the extraordinary circumstances, the decision has always been his. Back home, Peter hallucinates. Peter's hallucinations about his late Uncle Ben, who tells him he must move forward as life has given him a gift, a great power, and with it, a great responsibility. However, Peter replies that no, I want a life of my own. A dream is never just a dream, and it's quite interesting that his dream with Uncle Ben arose right after his conversation with the doctor, who opens up with the possibility for him to choose his path. This dream can serve as evidence for the interpretation that Peter's incredible obsession in destroying the evil is rooted in guilt for not having saved his Uncle Ben. That's why he might dream of him saying that it's as if Uncle Ben were his guilt personified, telling him, "You must go on, you must continue." Upon waking up, Peter goes out into the alley in his suit and throws it into the trash can, abandoning this task that had been consuming and invading every area of his life. Abandoning the responsibility that had become an interminable burden makes Peter's life noticeably better. He seems lighter and less worried since he no longer has to deal with the conflict situation as Spider-Man. Now he takes things more calmly and lives his life without stressing out. To improve the lives of others, Soon, we see how every aspect of his life, like Peter's personal life and his grades at university, is improving. Now he does not represent an empty seat in Mary Jane's life as he goes to her place. This makes her very happy. She even compliments him, saying he looks different now. During the meetings, Peter reveals that he still has feelings for her, but Jane interrupts him, reminding that she's getting married. Peter tries to convince her that he's different now, but she takes a taxi and leaves. Meanwhile, Harry, still bitter, tries to find out where Spider-Man's hiding so he can avenge his father, but a noise interrupts him. He goes out onto the balcony, where Dr. Octavius intercepts him, demanding the tritium reserves. Harry offers to donate them, but on one condition, that he either hands Spider-Man over alive so he can get revenge for all the harms he's caused. The doctor agrees. Harry tells him that his friend Peter Parker is in contact with him, so he'll know where to find him. Peter accompanies his Aunt May to visit her husband's grave. He sees that the woman he loves so much is still very affected by what happened and has gotten over the accident. Saying this provokes Peter, an even deeper feeling of guilt that becomes unbearable to bear. He doesn't feel enough for Mary Jane. He's not good enough to protect his family. His greatest torment now is having to see his aunt crying, blaming herself for not preventing Uncle Ben from leaving, wondering every day who's responsible for his death. So once home, he decides to tell his aunt the truth with the following words: "I am responsible." At first, May doesn't seem to care much, confessing to Aunt May how close he was to catching the thief, the opportunity he had to stop him, and according to his plan, preventing Uncle Ben's death. The woman's face changes, and Peter's unable to make eye contact. Peter tells her, "I could have stopped him, but revenge blinded me, and I did nothing about it." He tries to take her hand, but May pulls away, gets up from the table, and leaves. The only person in the world who still was with him now hates him. It is from this moment that Peter begins to notice the consequences of abandoning his role as a superhero. The guilt falls upon him in a different situation, where the defenseless cannot protect. Peter is shown the city needs Spider-Man. Crime skyrockets, and he can do nothing. He chose his path and accepted the consequences. Even so, he faces danger when he learns that a defenseless girl is trapped in a burning building. What would be an easy and quick job for Spider-Man is almost an impossible feat for Peter. Crossing the heat of the flames to save a life puts his own existence at risk. He no longer shoots webs or has the superhero strength, but he still risks his own life to save the little girl. After an effort, Peter manages to save the girl's life, but his conscience collapses when he hears the firefighter say that there was another man in the building who died from the smoke inhalation and burns, and he's reminded that whatever happens, he cannot save everyone. Spider-Man could have finished the job with all the pieces safe, but Peters unfortunately couldn't save them all. Despite no longer being Spider-Man, he can't get what he wants and wonders what he should focus on. Spider-Man wasn't the problem. He always believed his way out of a normal life was to give up the suit, but his aunt and friend hated him. The love of his life was about to get married. He continued living a day by day without being happy. That moment, when you don't know what to do anymore, nothing makes sense anymore. Missing the hallucinations he had with Uncle Ben to be able to talk to someone. As if it was a sign, Ursula watched him behind the door and with a smile offered him a slice of chocolate cake and a glass of milk. Peter's gaze changed completely. Such a tiny detail as a dessert and a little company changed everything. Peter visits his Aunt May, who's moving because she couldn't keep up with her mortgage payments. The boy arrives cautiously because he thinks that his aunt is angry about what he told her. She tells him that he was very brave to tell her the truth and gives him a hug. At that moment, a little boy named Henry appears, who's helping Aunt May pack for the move. Knowing that Peter takes pictures of Spider-Man, Henry asks him where Spider-Man is, and Peter, somewhat unsure, replies that Spider-Man quit because he wanted to try new things. The boy leaves, and May tells Peter something that makes him reflect deeply. She tells him that people need heroes. Everyone loves a hero. They line up to see them, cheer them, shout their name, and over the years, they recount how they endured hours of rain just to see the one who taught them to resist for one more second, and adds, "I think we all have a hero inside that keeps us honest and gives us the strength to keep going, even if sometimes that means giving up what we want the most, even our own dreams." We had said that this immersion of his superhero role is rooted in the guilt over Uncle Ben's death, which is why he did what he did, but he did it out of obligation. However, after this interaction where Aunt May dissolves him out of guilt, or rather responsibility, Peter is able to free himself from that burden. If the person most affected by Uncle Ben's death absolved him of that responsibility, then Peter takes a weight off his shoulders. Now, he no longer has to be Spider-Man out of guilt or obligation. Instead, he's presented with a new opportunity, where he can choose for himself to be Spider-Man. What Peter did was one step back to be able to take 2 more steps forward, and that's what Peter decided for his life, to keep moving forward. Later, he meets with Mary Jane for a chat at the coffee shop, but Dr. Octavius bursts in, throwing a car through the window. He approaches Peter and grabs him by the neck, demanding that he deliver a message to Spider-Man to meet him at the West Tower at 3 o'clock. To ensure the message reaches Spider-Man, Octavius throws Peter into the air and takes Mary Jane with him. Courage reawakens Peter's powers, and he regains his strength and sharpens vision. He picks up his suit and sets off in the pursuit of Dr. Octavius to save his friend. At that moment, when both their lives are in danger, he remembers that he does it for the people he loves. For Uncle Ben, for Aunt May, for Mary Jane, and for himself. Here comes Spider-Man, stronger and more determined than ever, overcoming what was his depression. It wasn't an easy path for Peter. He had to find himself accept his two lives, forming one without separating Spider-Man from Peter Parker. A fierce and savage fight erupts between Octavius and Spider-Man, beginning in the building and quickly moving to a passenger train. Octavius is extremely skilled in combat and uses underhanded tactics to endanger civilians and eliminate the hero. However, Spider-Man successfully encounters every attack from the Doctor's robotic arms. When he's overwhelmed, Octavius knocks the train conductor off his feet and accelerates the vehicle, sending it hurtling toward a cliff. For the first time, Spider-Man removes his mask in front of the civilians, revealing his true identity. With this gesture, he symbolizes the integration of both parts of himself, rather than seeing them as separate or even in conflict. Peter merges them. This implies a recognition that he's a hero, not only when wearing the mask, but at his core. Regardless of his identity as Spider-Man, he fires multiple webs at the nearby buildings, gradually slowing the train until, just before it plunges into the abyss, Peter manages to bring it to a complete stop. The effort is so great that Peter loses conscious, but before he falls, the townspeople catch him and together help carry him to safety. Seeing Peter on the ground, a man exclaims, "He's just a kid." And indeed, behind that mask hides a human being like any other, who simply received a special gift that he decided to use to help others. But deep down, he's just another person. Just then, some children enter and return to the mask he had lost, followed by, "We won't tell anyone." But the Doctor captures Spider-Man, whom he strikes, ties up, and takes to Harry's mansion. Harry, filled with resentment, fulfills his part of the deal, giving him the Trinium. Octavius leaves without saying anything more, leaving Harry with a knife ready for revenge, and Spider-Man unconscious and tied up. Before trying to hurt him, he removes the mask to see the identity of the man he believes killed his father. When he realizes it's his best friend, he's stunned. Peter frees himself and asks what the Doctor's doing, but Harry only replies, "You killed my father," without time for explanations. Peter decides not to tell the truth and decides to rescue MJ. He arrives at the Doctor's warehouse and laboratory, frees MJ, and the final battle begins. The fight is complicated, and Peter's already injured body suffers even more. He manages to electrocute the Doctor. However, the reactor continues functioning and absorbing everything around it. Peter approaches Octavius, removes his mask in front of him, and from one human being to another, asks how to turn off the reactor. However, Octavius replies that he can no longer be turned off, and then violently grabs him by the neck. Peter reminds the Doctor of the words he himself had told him in the past. Intelligence must be used for the good of humanity. These things have turned you into something you're not. Octavius replies, "But the project was my dream." To which Peter responds, "Sometimes, to do the right thing, we have to be firm and give what we love the most, even our dreams." The Doctor understands, gathers his courage, takes control of the robotic arms, and decides to try to sink the reactor in the river. At that moment, Peter and Mary Jane's eyes meet. The girl smiles, surprised and relieved as the pieces come together in her mind. She has just understood that Peter rejected her love and seemed distant and absent out of desire to protect her and those he loves the most. Dr. Octavius then positions himself under the machine, breaking the supporting structure, saying to himself, "I won't die a monster." The entire structure then collapses, killing the Doctor. Meanwhile, MJ and Peter escapes to safety. Mary Jane tells Peter that she always knew, to which he replies, "Then you know why he can't be together. Spider-Man will always have enemies, and I can't put your life in danger. I will always be Spider-Man, and you and I can never be." This breaks MJ's heart, but the action shows Peter's acceptance of a decision in order to do what he considers right and stands firm, even if he has to give up what he wants the most. When Peter explains to Mary Jane they can't be together, there's a noticeable change in his attitude. His smile reveals that now, instead of seeing his life as Spider-Man as a series of imposed obligations or just a way to atone for his suffocated guilt, he now sees it as a chosen path, one that has value and meaning in his life. Mary Jane's wedding day arrives. She looks somewhat bewildered. Her fiancé awaits her at the altar, and finally, the door opens. However, instead of MJ, a bridesmaid enters with a letter, which she hands to the groom. Upon reading it, John's smile fades. Moments after the altar scene, we see MJ running towards Peter's apartment. Still in her wedding dress, she enters. Peter turns around and stands up. Surprised to see her, she tells him that she wants to make her own decisions, and among these is not having a half-hearted life. Then she tells him, "I love you, and here I am, standing at your door. I've always stood on your door." Then they kiss, but are interrupted by duty, which Peter happily attends. A hero teaches everyone that even though life isn't going the way he wants, the answer is simpler than we think. We have to face life as if it comes. We must be strong and fight even when things or responsibilities are too hard to face. As Aunt May said, the hero will always be present in all of us, that we all need to be. For our loved ones, or for ourselves. That's Spider-Man, a figure of hope that allows us to keep resisting, to be strong, to be honest, and above all, you still have the ability to choose being strong.